If I have to give one advice to a newborn, I would say that you are allowed to grow at your own pace. Don't rush yourself just to fit the world's timing. Everything flows from that. It gives them permission to rest, to learn slowly, to fail without shame, to change their mind and to become something they didn't plan to be. The world will try to hurry them, label them and compare them. This advice quietly says, your rhythm matters. You will live more awake even when it scares you. Knowing you will die doesn't mean living in dread. It quietly sharpens things. You'll notice with conversation matters, you'll stop saving your tenderness for later. You'll mess up, repair, love imperfectly and keep going anyway. Some days you'll forget that entirely, wrapped up in course, jokes, noise, and that's okay. Other days it will tap you on the shoulder and remind you the moment counts, not because it's perfect, but because it won't repeat. So you live by choosing presence over postponement, truth over performance, connection over control, not hurried, not grand, just honest, one ordinary, irreplaceable day at a time. This question goes deeper than just how you feel when your alarm goes off. It's really asking whether your habit, life, and mindset are aligned enough that your mornings feel purposeful rather than draining. If you're constantly exhausted, hitting snooze repeatedly, or dreading getting out of your bed, your body may be signaling that something about your routine needs attention. If every morning feels like a grind or like you are bracing for impact, it may indicate stress, burnout, or lack of fulfillment. Conversely, if you wake up with curiosity, calmness, or even neutral readiness, that's a good sign that your perspective is balanced. You're waking up ready to take on the day when your sleep is adequate, your mind is stable, your life feels meaningful, and your habit supports you. If morning feels heavy or draining, that does not mean failure. It means your body or mind is signaling a need for change. Yes, I think I did. Sometimes it's not a big dramatic thing. It's a small moment, replying kindly, listening without rushing, cracking a quiet joke, or just being present when someone needed it. A lot of smile happen after we leave the room, when someone replays your conversation and thinks, that felt nice. You don't always get to see those things. A healthy perspective is less about always thinking positively and more about viewing situation in a balanced, realistic and self-supportive way. A healthy perspective acknowledges your feeling without letting them completely drive your decision. If you can say, I feel this strongly, but I can also step back and analyze the situation, that's a sign of perspective. If emotions constantly overwhelm logic, or if you shut your emotion down entirely, your perspective may be tilted. A lot of unhealthy thinking comes from focusing too narrowly on one detail. Unhealthy perspective often come with words like always, never, everyone, no one. A healthy mindset recognizes nuances. This situation is difficult, but it does not define everything. On an emotional level, the drive to protect someone you deeply care about is one of the strongest human motivations. Evolutionarily and socially, we are wired to preserve the safety of our close group. If a loved one were in immediate danger, say in a life or death medical emergency, a violent situation, or trapped somewhere, many people wouldn't hesitate to break a rule, trespass, steal something necessary, or ignore order if it meant saving them. In those moments, morally becomes centered on human life and well-being, not on compliance. On a moral level, philosophers often discuss this through the lens of higher order goods. Saving a life far outweighs the moral way of many laws. This does not mean laws are unimportant, but rather that laws exist to protect people, not to prevent people from doing what's necessary to protect each other. If obeying the law causes more harm than breaking it, many moral frameworks would argue that breaking the law is more ethical act. The honest, human answer is most people would break at least some laws to save a loved one, even knowing there might be consequences, because the moral and emotional way of protecting those we love overwhelms the abstract obligation to follow rules. It's a question that reveals your value, whether you prioritize duty to society or duty to the people who define your world. Life is not asking me to be perfect, to have everything figured out, or to win some invisible race. Life is asking me to pay attention to who I am becoming through my choices, my failure, and my growths. It asks me to show up honestly, even when I am unsure, afraid, or incomplete. Life asks me to learn from experiences rather than to escape them. Every challenge, loss, or setback is not meant to break me, but to teach me resilience, patience, and empathy. Life wants me to understand that pain is not pointless. It shapes depth and compassion within me. It also asks me to live with purpose and kindness, not necessarily to change the world in big way, but to impact the people around me through small acts, listening when someone needs to be heard, standing up when something is wrong, and choosing integrity over comfort. Most importantly, life is asking me to grow emotionally, mentally, and morally. While accepting that growth is slow and non linear, it asks me to embrace uncertainty, to keep moving forward even without clear answers, and to trust that effort itself gives meaning. In the end, life is asking me not just to exist, but to live consciously, courageously, and compassionately, leaving behind understanding rather than regret. If I could talk to my teenage self, the one thing I would say is I would tell you to slow down, breathe, and stop measuring your worth by how well you think you are doing compared to everybody else. You are putting yourself under so much pressure that you have to be perfect, to make the right decision, and to avoid disappointing anyone, that you are forgetting to enjoy the part of your life that will matter most later. The truth is, the thing you are stressed about right now, grades, popularity, fitting in, will not define your future. What will define you is how you learn, how you grow, and how you treat yourself along the way. I want you to know that it's okay to not have everything figured out. Everyone around you seems confident, but most of them are just unsure as you are. You don't have to rush to become the adult you think you are supposed to be. Let yourself make mistakes. Let yourself ask dumb questions. Let yourself try things even if you're scared. You won't be good enough at them. These are not failures. These are the building blocks of confidence. Unconditional love to me means showing up for someone without keeping score, being present, supportive, and compassionate even when the things are not easy, convenient, or perfect. It does not mean ignoring boundaries or accepting harmful behaviors, but it does mean grounding the relationship in patience, empathy, and a willingness to see the person as more than their mistakes. It looks like offering understanding instead of judgment. When someone is overwhelmed, stressed, or not at their best, unconditional love chooses to look deeper at these intentions, the heart, and the shared history, rather than reacting only to the moment. It listens before it assumes. It asks, what is going on inside you, rather than why are you like this? It also means allowing people to grow and evolve. Unconditional love doesn't trap someone in an old version of themselves. It makes space for change, even when that change is uncomfortable or unfamiliar. It celebrates progress, forgives missteps, and recognizes that everyone is a work in progress. What I love most about life is how it is constantly offering moments of meaning, some huge and unforgettable, others small and easy to overlook. Life can be messy, unpredictable, and challenging, but within all of that chaos, there are countless pockets of beauty that makes it worth living. I love the way life keeps surprising me. Even in difficult seasons, there always seems to be something unexpected, a person, a lesson, a moment that shifts everything and reminds me that change is always possible. That no matter how stuck or overwhelmed I feel, things can still turn around in ways I never imagined. I love the connections we build, the way friendship deepens through shared experiences, the comfort of being understood, the laughter that erupts over something so small and silly, and the feeling of being truly seen by someone. Human connection is one of the life's greatest gifts. How a stranger can become family, and how a single conversation can change the direction of the life. I love the simple joys, the warmth of sunlight on my face, the calm that comes from listening to rain, the smell of fresh coffee, the quiet moments when the world seems to pause. These things are easy to take for granted, but they are often the things that ground me and remind me to slow down. The question of whether it's more important to love or be loved goes to the core of human relationship, and the truth is that both are essential, but they play a very different role in your emotional life. To start, being loved is what transforms the foundation of everything else you are able to give. When you're deeply and reliably loved by family, friends, partners, or even just one steady person, you develop a sense of safety and worth. That safety teaches your nervous system that connection is not a threat. You matter, and that you deserve care. From childhood through adulthood, being loved is how you learn boundaries, and how you learn what healthy affection looks like. Without that experience, people often struggle to know how to build relationship because they never had a model of love. that felt secure. In that sense, being loved is the soil you grow from it, but loving is what shapes you from becoming. Loving someone, whether romantically, platonically, or even in a broader human sense, expands your empathy, deepens your emotional maturity, and gives your life meaning. When you love, you step outside yourself. You see the world through someone else's eye, and you cultivate patience, kindness, and generosity. Loving other is active. It is a choice and a practice. It pushes you to grow, to soften, to show up, and to give courage because it requires vulnerability. It teaches you humility because it asks you to hold space for another person's need, and it teaches you resilience because real love always involves risk. Choosing between failing and never trying gets to the heart of how you relate to fear, risk, and growth. On the surface, failing feels worse. It's uncomfortable, embarrassing, and sometimes painful. It can damage your confidence or leave you to question your ability, your worth, or your decision making. Failure stings because it is visible. Others people might notice it. You might have invested time or emotion, and the outcome didn't match the effort. It creates a moment where you have faced your limits, adjust your expectation, or rebuild your confidence. So, in short, falling hurts more, but when you zoom out and look at the long term impact, never trying is almost always worse. When you don't try, you protect yourself from disappointment, but you also protect yourself from possibility. You shut down opportunities before they even exist. You don't gain experience, you don't learn anything new, you don't get the satisfaction of knowing what you're capable of. You're left with what if, which can quietly weigh on more heavily than any failure could. Regret tends to live longer than embarrassment, while failure is temporary. The feeling of never having taken a chance can stay with you for years, sometimes shaping your self image in a negative way. I'm not the kind of person who goes for things or I don't deserve to take chances. Failure, for all its discomfort, gives you the feedback or direction, and it shows you how and what works and what does not, strengthens your resilience, builds skill, and teaches you how to navigate life with more understanding and confidence. People who fail and try usually end up more capable and more grounded and be proud of themselves, not because everything worked out, but because they faced fear instead of hiding from it. When you look closely at your life, you'll probably find that your control has always existed, but not in the absolute way you once imagined. You controlled your choices, but not always the circumstances around them. You've controlled your effort, but not always the outcome. You've controlled your decision, but not always the detours. Many parts of your life were shaped by things you never chose. Where you were born, the family you had, the opportunities that came or didn't come your way, the people who walked in, the people who walked out, the timing of event, and even random moments that became turning points. These forces, luck, timing, environment, relationship, expectation, play a bigger role than we often admit. But at the same time, you might have experienced real control in ways you may overlook. You're the one who decides how to respond to what happened. You made choices about who to trust, what risks to take, what to walk away from, and what to hold on to. You've steered your life through your values, your instincts, your desires, and your resilience. Even when something wasn't your choice, your reaction shaped its impacts. Every change you made, every boundary you set, every moment you grew, those were the acts of control. The arc of your life is partly sometimes something you navigated and partly something you adapted to. The kindest thing I can do for myself in moment of pain is to slow down and give myself permission to feel what I am feeling without rushing, judging, or minimizing it. Pain has a way of convincing me that I need to push through, stay strong, or pretend that I am fine. But kindness looks completely different. Kindness is about creating space for honesty when the pain is emotional. The kindest thing I can do is acknowledge it instead of hiding from it. That means saying to myself, what I am feeling is real. It deserves attention. So often, emotional pain gets worse when I try to ignore it or tell myself I should be struggling. Kindness means letting myself cry if I needed to, letting myself rest if my mind is tired, or letting myself talk about it instead of carrying everything alone. It means giving myself the grace to be human. Another kind thing I can do is take care of my body, whether the pain is physical or emotional. My body responds to stress and hurt. Simple acts, breathing deeply, stretching, drinking water, lying down for a moment, placing a hand on my chest can shift me from panic or tension into a state of calm. Sometimes the kindest thing is just to pause, even for a second, and remind myself that I am safe.